So this topic is discussing about map and related questions. There are 6 relative questions to this topic. Any programming language has various data structures. In JavaScript, we have arrays and object literals, which are very powerful and commonly used data structures. But in ES6, there are few more data structures introduced, and they are map, weak map, set, and weak set. In this section, we are discussing the map data structure. In object literal, we have key and data values. Map is also similar, but in case of map, the keys can also have types like string, number, boolean, etc. In fact, this is the collection or data structure where you are mapping value to value. Also, values inserted in map collection are retrieved in the same order. There are other good features of map, but at the moment, without wasting any time in discussion, let's jump into an example. To create a map, we use the map constructor. So for example, I'll say let product is equal to new map. Now comes the time where you have to assign the key and value. And as I mentioned in the beginning, that you can have different types of key as well. Let me show you that. There is a method called set method which allows you to assign key and value. So I'll say product.set, say for example product code, which I want to make a string key. So I'll put in single quotes and the value for example is 1001. Now let's try few more data types. Let's say I just want to give a number 1 and I'll say apple. Though this value doesn't make much sense at the moment, but we are trying to understand how the various types of keys we can assign. So I'm going to add one more example in that case. I'll say just true and for example available, something like this. So this is a map we have created which has 3 key value pairs. Now let me just straight away display the value of the product map. So I'll say product. Let's run the code. I'll say node map.js. Now you see that the keys which are displayed, not all the keys are in quotes. Like P code is in quotes, 1 is as it is, and true, which is a boolean value, is also as it is. So this in a way shows that the types are maintained. Now this key and value which you see, this key can be value itself. It is in fact a value. It is a value to value mapping as well. Now let's also try to get a specific value. In case if you want to, let's say, find a key which is named 1. So I can say here product.get. This get is the method which allows you to find a specific value by giving a key only. So let me run this again. Now you see that it displays apple here because the key of apple is 1. In fact, we can try this with true also. I'll say true. Again, let's run this. You see this? It displays available. There is also one more useful property with map which we don't have with object literal, and that is the size property. Size property actually returns the count of key value pair. So let's say instead of get at the moment, I'll simply say size. Now you see that it displays 3. That means there are 3 key value pair. So it returns a count. With array we have length property, but with object literals we do not have anything. We can write the coding, but we don't have any direct property to get the size which we have with the map collection. The way we have used the set method to assign a value, because map is also a data structure, we also have another way. Let's say for example, instead of set method, I can say product, then I'll put the square brackets which we can do with object literal. Here I can say price, for example, and I'll say 300. Right now, let me just display the product itself. I'll say execute it. Now you see that the collection we have here, it has product code, 1, true, and price as well. So we have added price in the collection for sure, but this way is not a very preferable way. And the reason is when you give key like this, it actually behaves like a key of object literal. So here the type will not be maintained. So the unique way of map where key has its own type, that will not be applied in this case. So ideally when it comes to assigning value, that is key and value, we don't go with this way, this syntax. Instead, we prefer to go with the set method only. So coming to the set method, set is one of the method which returns the map as well. Like when you say product.set, it returns a map. Every product.set returns a map. And if it returns a map, that means you can further chain it. So instead of writing this way, let me remove all these semicolons. And also I'm removing the product, right? So now this becomes a chaining syntax, isn't it? Like this. This is also a valid way of creating a map. So you don't write the product, that is the map name, all the times with the set method, because set method returns the map itself. So further you can chain it. Let me run the code and see that it is working absolutely fine. Another excellent advantage of map over object or a simple object, or you can say object literal, is that map is iterable. We have already seen with iterators concept that we were not able to iterate through object literals, right? Then we had to use iterators for that. But map is something which is already iterable. It means we can loop through the map collection. There are 3 methods we can use while implementing the iterations over the map. These 3 methods are values, keys, and entries. Let's try all the methods now here practically. I'm going to use the for loop where I'll say, for example, first thing we are trying is the values method. So I'll say v, for example. Let v of product dot values. Values is the method which is going to return all the values, and one by one let's try to display also, which will be inside v. Now I'll just clear this and run it. So now you see that 1001 apple and available, these are the 3 values we have here. So values helps you to loop through all the values of map. Now instead of values, if I just say, for example, keys, right? Now it doesn't matter whether I give v or k, but for better naming conventions, I will use k here. Now I'm running the code. You see this? It has looped through the entire collection and displayed all the keys. So we have seen values and keys. The next method is the entries method. Now this is one of the very useful methods because it returns both keys and values. Now for example, instead of k, I'll take e as a variable and I'll try to display e. Let's do this first. Now you see that we have the entire collection. Each key value pair you see is displayed as an array. That is the advantage. The reason is you can directly destructure these values. Let's say for example with let, I can directly put an array here where I'll say the first value returned in this array is key and then we have value, right? So here I can say let me take key first and the value second. So now we have both k and v. I have removed e now, so here also I'll display k and v only. K and v. That's it. Right? In fact, if I want, I can put a comma also in between while displaying. So I'll say, I'll use the template literals, that is the ES6 syntax. So I'll say $. I want to display k. There will be, let's say, a dash, and then I want the value v. Save it and run the code. So now you see that we have key value separated with a dash. So you get this idea that entries is the method which returns both key and value, which you can destructure like this within the for loop itself. Now as the map has entries method, just for the information that we already have an object called capital O object in JavaScript, which also has entries method. Now this is a method which can be used to convert map into simple object. Let's try that. I'll just remove this code at the moment. Let's say I create object literal. Here I'll say product code 1001, then product name, maybe orange, and let's say price. I'll say 56. First of all, let's try the objects.entries method. So I'll say object.entries Now what we want in the entries method is, I'm going to pass this obj. That's it, nothing else. Now let's run the code. If you see the output here, the object is converted into array where there is a sub array, right, which has both key and value mentioned here. So object.entries converts this object into simple array in a way. Now that array, if I pass in the constructor of map method, then this value collection will be converted into map itself. Let's try that. Instead of console log, I'll remove this. I'll say, for example, let product, that is the map which we want to create, where I'm going to use the constructor, and inside the constructor I'm going to pass object.entries obj. So whatever is returned by this entries method, which is going to be this only, right, this output will be part of product. Now let's display the product itself, that is the map. So I'll say product. Now let's run the code. So now we have this as map, that is the object literal is converted into map. There is also object.fromEntries method which can do reverse. A map can be converted into simple object also. Let's do that. I'll create a map very quickly. I'll say let product is equal to new map. Then I'll say product.set product code 1001. Now I'm going to use the chaining, though I can continue this way, but let me put it on a new line. So I'll say product name orange and dot set, let's say price 56. Now I want to convert this map into simple object. So I'll create the object, and here I'm going to use the from entries method. Here I'm going to pass product.entries. Now we have already seen that entries will return the array values and that will be converted into the object. So now if I display the value of obj, then it gives you the object literal, this one. So in short, object.entries and object.fromEntries are very useful sometimes with map when you want to convert map to simple object or simple object to map. There is also one more method called map.has. Now this has method takes a key and it checks whether the given key is existing in the map or not. It's a very simple method, but let's try once. I'll say console log, and here I'm going to say product, which is a map. I want to check, does it have a key called product code or not? Now if there is no key, no such key, it's going to return false, but because we have it here, it returns true. As long as iteration of map is concerned, we can also use the for each, which we have with map as well. We have already seen for each with array, but we can use for each with map as well. Let's quickly try that also. The syntax is very similar for each. It does take a callback function. So I'm going to write a callback function here, and it takes the same parameters. It does take the value, the key, and you must have observed with array that it takes array here, but here it takes the map. So I can just write m here. So it is the reference of this map itself. Now here I'll display console log. Let's display all the values. So I'll say v, I want to display, want to have a dash in between, and then I'll put a k. So both key and value, here value and key in fact, that will be displayed. So let's run and you see the output here. So for each is one of the way to iterate through, but you must remember that for each is something which cannot be broken in between. It has to finish the entire iteration. There are also ways to remove items from the map. The delete method removes values by key, and the clear method wipes out everything from the map collection. Let's quickly go through the example. Here is a code where I have p code, p name and price, and I am displaying the entire map collection. Now I will simply write product.delete. Here you have to specify the key. So for example, I just want to remove p name, and after the deletion also, I am just trying to display the value of map itself. Let's run the code. I'll increase this size. So as you see that in the first line, the p name is existing, and in the second, it doesn't exist. So delete is something which removes a specific key. But now in case if you just try the clear method here instead of delete, then you do not need to give any key here. It just clears everything. Let's run the code. So now you see that the map collection earlier has values in it, whereas the second doesn't have any value in it. Now let's discuss relative questions of this topic. The first question is, what are the advantages of using map over simple objects? The first thing is that maps keys can also be values. They can be of any data type, which we saw in the beginning of this section. Whereas in case of objects, we have keys as strings, though in newer JavaScript, we also have symbol which we can use as key, but it has a limitation. Whereas in map, you can have keys with data types, or in a way, value to value mapping is also possible, which doesn't happen with objects. Second point is that keys are ordered in map. The insertion and retrieval is always in the same order, whereas keys in objects are not ordered. Map has size property which returns number of key value pairs, whereas object doesn't have any direct way. You need to write the code to get the count of key value pairs. And the most important, that maps are iterable and object is actually not. Apart from this, there is one more point. Map is quite optimized for data manipulation compared to objects. That means the insertion, the deletion, more insertion and more deletion if you have, map performs better than the objects. The second question is, how will you iterate through map? Now we have already seen that we have values, we have keys, and we have entries method, right? That we can use, and we use the for of to loop through the entire map collection. These methods are useful when we have the iteration over map, and of course we can use the for each as well, which allows you to loop through the map collection easily. The third question is, can you assign key values with this syntax? Explain the reason for the answer. Well, writing this way is not that it's going to give any error, but the point is it will behave like a normal or a simple object where your keys become strings only. So the charm of map where you have keys with various data types, that won't happen. So this is a wrong way to assign a key to map. The fourth question is, how can you convert simple objects to map? So this is the code which we have already tried. We are using the object.entries method along with this to convert simple objects to map. And the fifth question is, how can you convert a map into simple objects? So here is the code. We used the from entries method, and then we converted the array values to object. And the sixth question is, how will you remove an item or all items from a map collection? So we have seen that either we use this delete method and give a key like this, or we can give the clear method which will remove all the items from the map.